After last year, it's weird how quick 2021 seems to be flying by, but we're in the second half, and that means tons of new games. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanks, the top 20 upcoming games of the second half of 2021. Starting off at number 20, it's Tales of Arise. Now, we've talked about this game a pretty fair amount already. It's the latest in the Tales series, and of course, that is interesting. This is a game that has always stayed true to its core concept, but evolved it quite a bit, and supposedly, this game is taking some steps to streamline the combat system a little bit, to make it a little bit less chaotic and easier to follow, but not screw with it too much. Arise takes place in a divided setting in which there's a medieval world and a technologically advanced world, and I'm interested to see how this game handles that clash. Tales has always been a great series. I'm looking forward to the next one. It's landing on Windows, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S on September 10th. At number 19 is Aliens Fireteam Elite, a standalone sequel to the original Alien trilogy and a third-person shooter. The game is set 23 years after the original films, but is primarily based on the second one, the 1986 film directed by James Cameron, the Terminator guy. It's a third-person co-op shooter that I would say is pretty darn different from Alien Isolation, which is a survival horror game, but it's got potential. It's coming to Windows, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One, and Series X on August 24th. At number 18 is Monster Hunter Stories 2: Wings of Ruin, a sequel to the turn-based JRPG based off Monster Hunter. Honestly, I'm stoked. I really enjoyed the first Monster Hunter Stories game, but I don't bring out the 3DS a whole lot, so I'm pretty excited to see the game come to the Switch, even if it's not the same game. It is specifically a different story, but it also looks like it continues a lot of the best stuff from the first game. It's also going to feature some kind of cross-compatibility with Monster Hunter Rise. Don't know exactly how. Sounds cool though. Monster Hunter Stories 2: Wings of Ruin is landing on Switch July 9th. And number 17 is Metroid Dread, a new side-scrolling Metroid, which to be frank is something I've wanted for a while. While it does seem like it's going to be a while before we see the next Metroid Prime, I love me some side-scrolling Metroid. They're also including the free aim and melee attack mechanics that were in Samus Returns, so I think that's a great thing to keep. Samus Returns, great game. Looking forward to this one, landing on Switch on October 8th. And number 16 is Samurai Warriors 5, a soft reboot of the Samurai Warriors franchise, probably of the Warriors franchise as a whole, due to how awful Dynasty Warriors 9 was. Terrible, kind of MMORPG-esque, but one-player open-world version of that game. Had the great fighting that we all knew and loved from the series, and tons of crap in between. Samurai Warriors 5 looks as though they are removing the crap in between and bringing us back to the kind of Warriors game we all want. It apparently features a slightly more limited, specific story of things that are leading up to the Honnoji incident in the Sengoku period. I'm excited. I've been kind of jonesing a more standard Warriors game since the newer Hyrule Warriors, the Age of Calamity, because that was really well executed, and although it did incorporate some elements from Zelda which are completely exclusive to that series, reminded me how well that formula works. Samurai Warriors 5 is coming to Switch, PS4, and Xbox One, as well as Microsoft Windows on July 27th. At number 15 is Little Devil Inside, an action-adventure game with role-playing elements. It's 3D. It has quote-unquote rather easy survival elements compared to other survival games, so I don't know if I would really qualify it as a survival game, as it's not really the focus. It does have an interesting aesthetic. You got swords, shields, guns, grappling hooks, bombs, tents. I mean, there's a fair amount of possibilities, and the game has cooperative multiplayer. The idea is to go out and capture monsters, at least on the surface. The actual idea of the game is about the mundane inequalities in the monster hunters' lives. I like that idea. It sounds fun. We don't have an exact date, but it will be landing on PlayStation 5, 4, Windows, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch sometime later in the year. At number 14 is No More Heroes 3, the comic book, satirical, over-the-top, action, silly, probably gonna get somebody into trouble type game, which takes place 9 years after the previous title and features an open world, being the first game in the series to do so since the very first. Now, these are funny games, silly games, and have great action. I think it's definitely worth checking out when it lands on Nintendo Switch on August 27th. And number 13 is Psychonauts 2, which has been a game that has been a long time coming to us from Double Fine Studios. Obviously, it'll be similar to the original. It's a platform game. You're a psychonaut with powerful psychic abilities, and obviously that's integrated into the puzzle platforming elements of the game. Psychonauts 2 actually picks up after the VR game, Psychonauts The Rhombus of Ruin. This is a game that was delayed constantly until Double Fine was acquired by Microsoft. And frankly, I'm interested to see how it plays out because it's had a long development history. This was announced in like 2015, if I remember right. The game is finally landing on August 25th on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. And number 12 is Kena Bridge of Spirits, a PlayStation exclusive that in some ways reminds a lot of people of Breath of the Wild. However, it's very heavily inspired by Eastern locations like Japan, and genuinely is just an incredibly beautiful looking game. One of the things that the studio that made this game, Ember Lab, became known for was actually an animated film based on Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask called Terrible Fate, so it's not shocking they would make this type of game. However, it's a game that looks incredible. However, it seems to have other elements, like a lot of people have noted there is a similarity to Pikmin in some of the ideas. I'm very interested to see how this plays out. It's landing on PlayStation 4 and 5 on August 24th. And number 11 is Rainbow Six Extraction, the latest in the tactical shooter series. This is a co-op multiplayer game, as are many. You can play co-op with up to 2 other people, and more or less follows up the Rainbow Six Siege time-limited game mode Outbreak, which put players in New Mexico fighting aliens. That's basically what you're doing here as well. Rainbow Six Extraction will be landing on PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S on September 16th. And number 10 is Ghostwire Tokyo, a really unique looking game, specifically a first-person action-adventure game with psychic and paranormal stuff where you have to defeat ghosts in Tokyo. One of the developers describes the combat as karate meets magic because there's spells and also hand-to-hand combat in a Tokyo where all of the people are just gone. Just disappeared one day and a bunch of ghosts came. Now there's a bunch of ghosts, you gotta defeat the ghosts and try to figure out what the heck's going on. For me, that sounds like a great game. Ghostwire Tokyo is landing on PlayStation 5 and Microsoft Windows in October, and Xbox Series X and S sometime after that. At number 9 is Forza Horizon 5, a Mexico-centered Forza Horizon game, which will give us tons of new and different locales to speed around in fantastic Forza Horizon action. It is a beautiful looking game in which we're going to see what seems like a lot of different off-road stuff, as well as weirder vehicles for that purpose. But of course, it's also one of the best looking racing games. Hell, one of the best looking games, period, with new dynamic weather. Honestly, like, it's another Forza Horizon game, which if you don't like Forza Horizon, probably doesn't matter to you. But I'm one of these people who, I do like racing games, but I probably like Forza Horizon more than most of them. There's just some elements about it that make it easier to pick up, play, and get into without having played it for a while, and that's part of why I'm so excited to see a Forza Horizon with such radically different terrain. It's also apparently 50% larger than Forza Horizon 4, having the largest map in the entire series. I'm excited about that. Forza Horizon 5 is landing on Windows, Xbox One, and Series X and S on November 9th. And number 8 is Age of Empires 4, a game that seemed like it was never going to happen for a very long period of time. It was announced on 2017, which is a very long time from the previous game, which came out in 2005. Age of Empires 4 is actually going back to the gameplay of Age of Empires 2 and building from there. I think that's a good decision. 2 was probably better than 3 in my opinion, and honestly the opinion of a lot of other people. Really, it's a real-time strategy game that is among the best, period, and I cannot wait to play 4. It's coming out on Windows and Xbox Cloud Gaming on October 28th. And number 7 is
Deathloop. This is probably the game I am most excited for on this list. Deathloop is the next game from Arcane Studios, the developers of Dishonored. Really just fantastic devs. And Deathloop looks kind of like Dishonored on steroids in a sort of techno-future setting where there's a time loop, and it looks like it ramps up everything that we know about Dishonored to take advantage of a new generation of hardware, as well as a new aesthetic and world. Really, it looks like something really fresh, while also being a continuation of the power-oriented gameplay we see in Dishonored. As far as I'm concerned, Arcane is really just one of the best devs out there. I absolutely love the Dishonored series, and I cannot wait to play this.
And number 6 is Battlefield 2042, a multiplayer focused first-person shooter set in the near future. It looks to directly update a lot of the stuff that they used in Battlefield 4, like destructive environments and Levolution, but it's also going to up it by including extreme weather effects like tornadoes and sandstorms. The next gen and PC versions are going to support up to 128 players, which is pretty wild. Battlefield 2042 is coming on October 22nd to PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X and S. And number 5 is Halo Infinite, obviously the flagship next-gen Xbox game, one we have been waiting for, one we are of course interested in. It's kind of a much more human interpretation, and apparently Master Chief is much more front and center than in Halo 5 Guardians. This is the third chapter of the Reclaimer saga, so it's not like a huge reboot in story or anything. It is a continuation. But in terms of visuals, it looks like a massive upgrade, and they're really trying to remind us of why Halo is such a well-liked franchise. I'm excited for it. It is landing holiday 2021 on Windows, Xbox One, and Series X and S. At number 4 is Back 4 Blood, the return to form from Turtle Rock Studios, making a full-on standalone brand new game, functioning as a spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead. And even though they have worked on the Left 4 Dead franchise for Valve, there really hasn't been a new game from these developers in this genre, kind of this series, even though it's not exactly the same series. And frankly, I'm extremely excited for it. I love Left 4 Dead. I can't believe it's taken this long to give us a new game from this developer in this genre. I could say that 10 to 15 more times. It sucks we had to wait this long, but I'm really excited for it. Back 4 Blood lands on PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, Series X and S, and PC on October 12th. And number 3 is Far Cry 6, a game set in a fictional Caribbean island with Gus Fring as the main bad guy. Obviously, that's not his name. He's the actor who played Gus Fring, but still, that is a big draw because this looks like an extremely interesting, if not maybe a little bit exaggeratory, version of Cuba, in which you'll be playing as a revolutionary. And honestly, politically, it might be a little bit misguided in terms of using Cuba for the story it wants to tell, but it still looks like an interesting story. Far Cry 6 is landing on Windows, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One, Series X and S on October 7th. And number 2 is Guardians of the Galaxy, a game that's honestly kind of shocking hasn't come out yet. I mean, we've seen that series go on for a while now. It comes to us from Square Enix, developed by Eidos Montreal. You control Star-Lord, it's third person, it's an action-adventure game. Guardians of the Galaxy will be landing on Windows, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and Nintendo Switch via cloud on October 26th. And finally, at number 1 is Dying Light 2, Stay Human. This is a game set 20 years after the original, still retains parkour, still retains a lot of the interesting stuff, although they've widely expanded like the animation system and how that parkour is going to work. The story focuses on a new Dark Ages and has a few writers who worked on Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and also then intends to tell a narratively branching story that allows for a lot of different branching choices. It's supposedly why the game got delayed in the first place. The game actually has a release date now for Windows, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and that is December 7th. Couple of bonus games for you. First, Chernobylite, a survival horror RPG. It's been in early access for a while. It was a Kickstarter game. It's being officially released on Windows, PS4 and 5, Xbox One, Series X in July. Next is The Ascent, this really interesting cyberpunk city-based game, an action RPG played from a top-down view. It brings in twin-stick shooting elements and Diablo type elements to make something that seems very unique. That's landing on Windows, Xbox Series X and S, and Xbox One on July 29th. Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, which of course, how can you not be excited for? If you like Legend of Zelda, I mean, it's one of the better games out there, but it's also been exclusively available on the Wii up until this point. I'm really excited to have it for Switch. They're also making it so you can skip cutscenes, which is nice, especially if you played the game already and don't really want to see some of the more annoying ones. Finally, Grand Theft Auto 5 for PlayStation 5 and Series X is happening. It's apparently expanded and enhanced. I don't really know what that means, but both Grand Theft Auto 5 and Grand Theft Auto Online are landing
launching on PS5 and Xbox Series X in November on the 11th.
Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, remakes of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl from the 2006 Nintendo DS era. Basically, we're looking at probably Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire type remakes, where the gameplay is mostly the same, but a lot of things look very different. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, Falcon Hero. We'll see you next time right here on GameRanks.